General Manager Joe Douglas and Assistant General Manager Rex Hogan held their first press conference of the year at Florham Park. Let's talk about it.
No huddle, Wilson end zone, caught, touchdown, Elijah Moore.
What's going on, guys? Welcome back to Talking Jets with Tigo, and today we're going to be going over my reactions and what I kind of took away from the press conference that General Manager Joe Douglas and Assistant General Manager Rex Hogan did at Florham Park today. This is the first real, I like to call, press conference of the season. This is the one that I think that matters because it's the one at the beginning of the voluntary workouts at the facilities, and it's the biggest one that, like, it leads up to the draft, and I think it gives us a lot of information. And I've made my notes here, so I'm gonna go over what I kind of heard, what I think is important, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this stuff as well. But before we move on, guys, the draft is 7 days away. We are so close to the draft. I would love to be able to do that giveaway. We're at 18 subscribers right now. If we can hit that 50 or 100 mark before the draft, that would be great. Lots of Jets content is coming your way. Doing a lot of prep for the draft and all that stuff that's coming. So really excited there. Hoping to kind of get myself in a position to talk with some other people, because that's why I started this channel. Really was to interact with other Jets content creators and to really just build a community of people to talk to. So really trying to work my way into some communities and things like that to have those people to talk to and share my opinions and hear some of everybody else's opinions. So let's get right into the press conference. The first thing, and I think this is the most important thing that we got to talk about, is Joe Douglas, unquestioned, unasked, just in his little, introductory spiel, said multiple times that the Jets feel great about the players that they brought in this offseason, and they feel great about this offseason in general. You like to hear that out of your general manager, especially because, and Joe Douglas and Rex Hogan touched on this is the first real offseason that they've gotten since being in the building. They've never had to deal with they've always had to deal with the fact that, like, we had the COVID year, and then we had a year where we didn't have a draft, and then we had virtual visits and all this stuff. This is the first time that they can bring in players to the building, get a vibe of these players, talk with them, walk around the building, see how they interact with the staff, and see how they go about and talk football and all that stuff. And I believe in this staff a great amount, and so giving them the ability to have these conversations and really break down their evaluation of these players is, I think, a really big thing for this staff. Point 2 is that they said that they have about 10 players that they feel super comfortable with on their board. When they were asked about what the plan is when addressing the draft and how do you go about picking players and what happens in a situation where your favorite player or something like that isn't on the board, he countered that by going, you always go around with your staff and your coaches and your scouts to break down the players that you feel the most comfortable with. But then he also caveated that with saying that they felt really comfortable with about 10 players in this draft, that no matter how the board fell, no matter what happened, they felt real good with the way the board would fall, because they have 10 players that they feel super comfortable drafting. So 2 things kind of go into this one. The first one is, I think part of that is just general manager talk, just saying, like, hey, we're not relying on one player or one position or anything like that. And I think that's true. I don't think that they're relying on one player or one position group really in that with those top 10 picks. The 2 top 10 picks, man, English is hard. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that the plan going into this draft, because He said it a million times, and Rex Hogan said it a million times. We get it, guys. They want to go best player available. They want to go BPA at every pick in the draft without having to force players. And I get it. But I also feel like we've tipped our hand a little bit in that sense of like, hey, we're going to feel, I don't know. I feel really weird about it because like, I think we need to walk away with an edge in this class, and they talked about how they felt comfortable with Lawson and they were counting on Lawson because we saw how good he was at previous year at camp and stuff like that, and they are totally factoring into the plans of this year a healthy Carl Lawson. But I also, and we signed a lot of players this year in that in the trenches on the offensive line and the defensive line. So it's one of those things where I feel a little bit torn because part of me is like, yes, absolutely, go best player available. But part of me is also go best player available at a position that they can impact the most. Like, I would hate for us to go, like, if the best player available on your board is like a punter. I'm just using punter as an example because, like, I love Matt Araiza, right? But, like, we have Braden Mann. And Braden Mann set records in college and did all of those things. That it's just one of those things where it's just like, I don't even know where I'm going with this, where it's just like, I don't know what the draft strategy should be. I don't necessarily love the idea of going best player available, but I also don't want to force picks, because when you force picks is where you bust. I'd like for us to find a happy medium, but ultimately in Joe Douglas we trust. I think that's the most important thing. The other thing that we got to lean ourselves into, and they brought this up, is the belief in the offensive line and in this guard room specifically. Joe Douglas said, and I quote, "We think we have one of the best, if not the best, guard pairs in the NFL," and I have to agree with them. I think Elijah Vera Tucker coming into his second year is going to boom, and he's just going to look incredible. Even if he's moving to the right side, I don't really care about that. And then when you add a player of Laken Tomlinson's caliber, a Pro Bowler, someone who's familiar with the scheme and the coaches and doesn't have to learn a whole bunch coming and transitioning, I think that's a huge, huge deal. And I think that's a big deal for our offensive line, because we're going to be solid, across that front five for the first time in a long time. And I think that's going to give our wide receivers more time to get open. I think that's going to give Zach Wilson more time in the pocket so that when he gets to use his legs, it's a little bit further down the play when the play is developed a little bit more. That being said, I do think Zach Wilson needs to speed up his process. He does hold on to the ball a little bit too long, but I think that was just rookie jitters. But I really, really like that aspect of what he said there. Another thing, because I want to talk the Becton story last. One thing that he also said is that they really, really like, because when they were asked about the cornerback room, they asked, do they, like, what do you think about this cornerback room and everything like that? And he obviously praised DJ Reed and said, like, bringing in a player of DJ Reed's caliber is always a good thing to do, especially when you can bring him in that young. But for me, I think the really important thing here is that he really hit it home that they believe in this coaching staff and that they believe in these young players and that they've invested a lot of assets to this cornerback room. And I don't know about you guys, but I really got a vibe of like that was true and it wasn't just GM talk. I don't see it. I think my draft plans have changed a little bit where I don't see us spending more assets in the cornerback room. I think it was funny because one of the other reporters, one of the beat guys asked, how do you feel about, because you invested so much in the offensive line in first round picks in the last 2 or 3 years? And my thing is like, yes, we've invested first round picks in there, but I'd love to know how many picks we've invested in the secondary. Because like last year alone, we took like 3 or 4 like corners and safeties and things like that. And yeah, we converted some of those safeties to linebackers and all of that stuff, but it's just like, it's weird to me because people keep mocking Derek Stingley and Ahmad Gardner and different players like that to the Jets. And I look at it and I go, guys, we've invested a lot of capital, not high-end capital, but we've invested a lot of capital in these positions, and I just don't see us doing that again or moving forward. I don't know. That's just my vibe. Let me know what you guys think. And then I guess last but not least is Mekhi Becton, or I'm sorry, one other thing that he said, and I think this reveals a little bit of their strategy is, and Joe Douglas said this right at the end when asked about how you go about drafting players because of the trend is you draft captains and guys with high RAS scores and all of those things. And he says, I don't know about other rooms in the NFL, but we believe in getting guys that are unusual people and adding freaks to the roster. And I think he kind of tipped his hand there and said, like, yeah, they absolutely go for athleticism over, necessarily production. They want freak athletes. They want people that are coachable. They want people that are moldable and that are willing to work hard. And I think that when you get these freak athletes, they're the guys who can turn into incredibly good players and with incredibly high upsides in really, really low parts of the draft. Now, I don't know if that's what they do at the top end of the draft necessarily, in the sense of like they stick to their guns about there, or whether they just go, like I said, best player available, or how they set up their boards. But later on in the draft and in later rounds, I would definitely feel more comfortable with just taking guys that are just freak athletes and that are just raw athletes who can be molded into whatever we need them to be. And then lastly, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Mekhi Becton is not at OTAs. Of the offensive line room, there are only 2 players that are not available or not at OTAs, and Mekhi Becton is one of them. The other one, I believe, is McGovern, but I think McGovern isn't there because his wife just gave birth to his baby. I don't remember who's the second player who's not there, but there is another player. But his wife, they have a newborn, so yeah, he's not in New York. Let me start by saying this: that we know exactly where Mekhi Becton is. All of this hubble-baloo and all of this conversation and all of this whatever that we don't know what Becton is doing. No, we know what Becton is doing. He's in Dallas. He's in Texas. He's with Manny. They're working hard. It's all over social media. Every chance they get, they're posting Mekhi Becton's work at social media and on all of that stuff. The other thing, guys, is we got to remember this is voluntary workouts. These aren't mandatory. There is no requirement for these players to be here at all. And I think that that's the biggest thing. I think Mekhi Becton feels comfortable with his training regimen and what they're doing and his situation in Texas. His girl is about to give birth soon anyway. So, and I think his whole family, and by his whole family, I mean like him and his lady and everything are in Texas with him. Like, I look at that and I go, I'm okay with it. Like, these voluntary workouts aren't anything super serious. It's not like they're just going through meetings. They're talking and readdressing the playbook and talking things like that. Like, this becomes a story if he misses out on actual training camp, guys. Not if he's missing the voluntary ones. They're voluntary. You do not have to show up. And I understand that he's competing for a roster spot and all of those things, but I think that this is a non-story, truthfully. Now, I will say this about our draft strategy. I do think that we are in on an offensive lineman at 4 or 10, or even at 35 and 38. I think that because of the fact that if we're trying to trade for a wide receiver of Deebo Samuel's caliber, I think the next biggest position of need outside of edge really, really comes down to offensive line depth. Our guards, I feel comfortable with the interior of the offensive line and all of those positions there. But my thing really comes into is if Mekhi Becton or George Fant, because I don't like Becton got rolled up on. It's unlucky what happened to him, and there's not like anything that he can do to control that. But if any of those guys go down, we just don't have depth. We can't run out a Doga out there, another year. So keep an eye out on the Jets drafting a tackle higher than some people expect. Alrighty, guys, I'm going to end the video there. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. I'd love to hear what you thought about this about Joe Douglas and Rex Hogan speaking. Really, really interesting stuff. My name is Tigo. Really, really excited about the draft and what's going on. And last but not least, boys, go Jets.